Right. Uh, Today we'll talk about the exchange rates. As you all know, exchange rates affects our life on a daily basis. You know that for the last 2.5 years, US dollar ASEAN parity has not been changed. It's something around 1.7. But before then, you remember that it was 0.7, then increased to 1.05, then increased to 1.5. Now it's settled down around 1.7. So as you all know, exchange rates affects our life, right? Uh, if ASEAN, let's say, became more valuable, right, relative to the US dollar or other currencies, uh, foreign exchange goods became cheaper for all of us, right? You remember when ASEAN was 0.7, uh, all imported goods were very cheap for us, right? And of course, the vice versa is true. The Azerbaijani goods was more expensive at that time for the foreigners. In this lecture, our key concepts are uh, foreign exchange markets. We'll talk about the exchange rates in the long run. Next lecture, we will talk about the exchange rates in the short run, interest rate parity conditions, and try to explain the change in the exchange rates, right? But the last three items, last three topics will be covered in the next lecture. Okay, first of all, why countries need different currency, right? As you all know, most of the countries, almost all countries, have their own currency, including Azerbaijan. So why? What's the motivation behind it? What do you think about it? Anyone? Alida, yes. So that bank can regulate the money supply. I mean, you mean the central bank, right? Yes. Because of difference in inflation, yes. Well, basically, uh, a country with its if the world has only one currency, what would happen? Yes, what would happen? Why? I'll tell you. Basically, a country with its own currency can make decision about money supply and interest rate, as you said, right? Therefore, they can tailor its monetary policy depending on their own economic conditions. If the world has only one currency, let's say US dollar, right? Then the inflation rate in the US dollar and in your country, you cannot control it. You cannot uh, effectively apply your monetary policy depending on your needs. I'll tell you, every country have their own financial history or financial weakness. For us, Turkish Turks, we are afraid of the devaluation. Probably same in the Azerbaijan, right? So we had a devaluation problems. Uh, for Germans, inflation was the big problem, or still is the big problem, because before the First World War and the Second World War, uh, Germany experienced a hyperinflation, right? For US, decline in the stock price or the index, stock index was the or still is the main problem. In 2000 no, in 1929, the US experienced a big problem based on this decline in the stock prices. For France, unemployment is the main problem. So as you have seen, different country has their own different problems or right. So that's why they need an independent monetary policy. So that's why, Nurlan, the world do not have only one currency. Right. Also, when the exchange rates are not fixed, in Azerbaijan right now it's managed between, I mean, somehow around 1.7, but in a freely open markets, the exchange rates are not fixed, and this exchange rate fluctuations can offset the trade imbalances, right? This is another issue. What's the foreign exchange market? Basically, the foreign exchange market is the trading the currencies, right? We have two kinds of exchange rate transaction. The first one is the spot transaction, which is involved immediately right now. If you buy an US dollar against ASEAN right now, it's a spot transaction. Up to 2 days, it's called spot transaction, right? Or it might be a forward transaction. Forward transaction involves exchange at some future dates, right? At a predetermined specified price level. So if you decided or sign an agreement with someone else, of course with a bank, to buy a US dollar on, let's say, next month, 25th of May, with a specific level, let's say 1.71. I know it's not, but let's, as an example, then this is a forward transaction, right? So forward transaction is customized transaction between two parties, okay, on a future, of course, in a future date. Does the banks offer forward transaction in a well, I'm not sure, but yes, probably. In general, all around the world, yes, you can find the forward transaction. But in Azerbaijan, as you all know, it's managed for last 2.5 years, almost maybe 3 years. The exchange rate is only 1.7, so doesn't. I mean, doesn't. There's no need to do it. But basically, yes, you can. Why not? Is it possible to cancel forward transaction before due? Well, actually, Ismail, it's not possible. It's not fair. If you can do it, you can cancel it. Means you may default it, right? But if it is the case, if you cancel it, no one will do an forward transaction once again. So you cannot find the counterparty to do it once again. You can do it for once or twice maximum, right? If you know that the counterparty is not cancel, I mean, is not reliable, you do not want to do it, right? Or basically in the markets you can do the reverse. If you, let's say, you buy a ASEAN, or forget about ASEAN, let's say you buy a US dollar against Turkish lira as a forward transaction, right? For the same day, you can do the reverse. You can sell a Turkish lira against US dollar, then your, you will be net off. You will not have anything on that day, therefore. So this is how the market works in reality. But canceling the transaction is not something good. Right. But he will lose from the differences. Yes, of course. I mean, of course. But because of the market volatility, he may gain. We don't know. Think about it. The Turkish lira devalued for the last few days, even few weeks, right? So you may gain as well, not necessarily lose. But if you want to do it against ASEAN, definitely you will lose it because the differences between the buying and selling quotation. Right. Here is the exchange rates, ASEAN US dollar exchange rates. You see, it was 0.7. Then after a two devaluation, somehow for the last almost 3 years, it's 1.7. Here is the Turkish lira, right? But it's again until 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So it's very volatile. It was 5.7 at that day. And here is the US dollar euro exchange rate. In 2019, it was 1.14. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, it's something around 1.008. Let me check it. Yes, 1.078. Let's say 1.08. Right. Okay. And here is the other currency, right? You see the Canadian dollar, British pound, Japanese yen, and euro. Of course, all are against US dollar, right? As you have seen, euro started in 1999. Before 1999, there wasn't any currency called euro. Since then, for the last 20 years, 21, we have euro as well. Okay. Why exchange rates important? Why are exchange rates important? Right? Uh, think about right. Assume that you would like to buy a Japanese good, let's say a pen, right? Japanese pen, right? Uh, let's see how it affects the exchange rate affects our life on a daily basis. Let's see it. Assume that that's a pen that you would like to buy cost 630 yen in Japan, right? And the exchange rates right now is one ASEAN is equal to let's say 63 yen, right? In this case, this pen is cost you 10 ASEAN, isn't it? So this is the first initial cases. Okay. Then suppose that you delay your purchase by 2 months, right? You decided to buy 2 months later, right? Still, this pen is still 630 yen in Japan, but something happened and yen has appreciated, right? Against ASEAN. Then one ASEAN became, let's say, 50 yen. Okay. Then what's the cost of this pen in this case? To you. Yes, Ergun, exactly. 12 point. Yes, Nurlan, right. 630 divided by 50, which is 12.6 ASEAN, right? You see, because of the yen appreciation or the ASEAN depreciation, if one currency is appreciate, means the other one is depreciate, right? The cost of pen increased to 12.6 ASEAN during this 2 months time, right? You see, the exchange rates affects our life on a daily basis. Then, as a result, right, as a conclusion, when a country's currency appreciates, the country's good abroad became more expensive, and the foreign goods in that country became cheaper, right? If the currency appreciates. Or vice versa, conversely, when a country's currency depreciates, like our example, its good abroad became cheaper, right? And the foreign goods in that country became more expensive, like our pen in Azerbaijan. Is it clear? Any question? Clear, good. Let's move on. How the foreign exchange traded? How is foreign exchange traded, right? Uh, Basically, foreign exchange market. Okay, there's a question before this slide. So ASEAN depreciates, makes imports more expensive, but exports more cheap. However, ASEAN appreciation makes imports cheaper, but exports more expensive. In this case, what's the trade-off? Uh, I couldn't, I mean, what you said is true, Nurlan, but I couldn't get your question. When the ASEAN appreciates, the buyer will appreciate, buyer will buy less. Why? How? When ASEAN appreciates. Yes, the foreign buyers buy less, right? But yes, your exports will be more expensive, true. So appreciation is bad for you. Uh, well, yes or no? Well, it's more, yes, from this perspective, right. It's much more complicated in real life, but from this perspective, right. If your currencies appreciate, uh, you cannot export as it was, right? You're right. So the appreciation is something bad for you. Right. Uh, the depreciation, well, depreciation itself, so that should be a balance, right? If you keep your currency in a certain level for a long time, fixed, as Azerbaijan did before 2015, if your currency is fixed for a long time, then uh, after a certain time, you may need to devalue it, right? So it's better to keep in a certain level. We'll talk about it, don't worry. Right. The foreign exchange market is organized as over-the-counter markets, right? So in this markets, there are several dealers ready to buy and sell, right? Usually in this markets, in the OTC markets, the minimum ticket size is $1 million or more. This is the minimum ticket size. And in this market, the daily volume is more than $4 trillion per day, right? So, how can we quote it? The exchange rates. Uh, the direct quotation as a definition is the per unit of foreign currency quoted as a domestic currency. Like $1, which is the foreign currency, right? Quoted as 1.7 AZN, which is our domestic local currency, right? So this is a direct quotation. 1.7 AZN equal to $1 in Azerbaijan is a direct quotation, right? So the quotation depends on the location of the speaker, right? Let me underline this once again. The quotation depends on the location of the speaker. Let's talk about the British pound AZN. For you in Baku, direct quotation is 1 pound is equal to 2 AZN. I know it's slightly more than 2 AZN, but anyway, to make it simple, let's say 2 AZN. For yourself, let me write here, direct quotation is 1 GBP is equal to 2 AZN. Okay, this is your perspective. For my perspective, direct quotation is 1 AZN is equal to 0.5 GBP, right? Because right now I'm in UK. So this direct quotation depends on the location of the speaker, right? The first one is from your perspective. The second one is from my perspective, right? So this is direct quotation. Is it clear? Yes, I guess it's so. Indirect quotation is the vice versa, right? When you see direct or indirect quotation, you need to think about the speaker, the location of the speaker. Yes, yes, right, Nurlan. The first one, from your perspective, because foreign currency for yourself is GBP, right? For myself, the second one, the foreign currency is ASEAN, not GBP, because I'm in UK. Clear? Good. However, as you have seen, there is a huge however here. However, as you all know, US dollar is the most actively traded currency in the world, right? Well, it's traded everywhere. And most currencies, I mean, we'll talk about the exceptions. Most currencies are quoted against US dollar, right? So US dollar is a kind of base currency, right? Then everyone all around the world, even in the United States, speaks like the one US dollar against to the other currencies, right? So even in the United States, they are not concentrated on if it is a direct or indirect quotation, just they are quoted as one US dollar is equal to how much other currency is, right? So base currency is always US dollar, with two major exceptions. The first one is the British pound, right? If you quoted US dollar against British pound, then British pound is the base currency. So one British pound is equal to right now, if I'm not mistaken, 1.23 US dollars, right? So if you are talking about British pound against US dollar, British pound is the major currency, base currency. If you are talking about the pound against ASEAN, pound is the base currency, right? So this is the first exception. The second one is the euro, right? Then that's why in the internet, in everywhere, in the newspapers, you'll see 1 euro is equal to how much US dollar. In this case, euro is the base currency, right? Same for the Azerbaijani, I mean, US euro against Azerbaijani manat, right? If you are talking about euro against pound, then tell me which one is the base currency. Pound is the base, no, no. So in this case, euro is the base currency. Euro should be always be the base currency wherever it's traded, right? If traded against pound, euro should be the base currency, right? Against dollar, yes. If then against dollar, euro is the base currency. Right. So euro is the base currency. British pound is the base currency against US dollar, and US dollar is the base currency against all other currencies. So euro is base currency everywhere, right? Even in the even in the euro area, even in the US, even in the here in Azerbaijan, in Turkey, wherever it is, it's the base currency, right? So euro, pound, dollar. This is the rank. Is there any reason why it's so? Well, the reason is uh, for US dollar, you know, it's the main trading items, right? It's traded all around the world, so that's why. British pound was the previous uh, currency before US dollar. British pound was the dominant currency, right? And euro, well, so they when they uh, invented euro, they want to be a dominant currency in the markets, and so they decided to quote it in that way. For the last 20 years, it's quoted like this, right? So that's why. It doesn't, the base currency does not affect our exchange rate, of course. I mean, but it makes our life easier. So when you see US euro dollar, I mean US dollar against euro 1.8, you understand that 1 euro is equal to $1.8, right? So it makes your life easier. You don't need to think which one is the $1 is equal to, or 1 euro is equal to which one. You don't need to think about it. So that's why uh, it's traded like this. Is it so? If the euro is the base, it means we will look 1 euro is equal to how much the other currency is. Right. Exactly. For another base currency, right. Right. So base currency is $1 is equal to how much ASEAN, how much Turkish lira. Right. Okay. I guess the direct and indirect quotations are clear. Right. Let's move on. The exchange rates in the long run. Right. Uh, like any other goods or assets in the free markets, exchange rates are determined by the interaction of supply and demand, right? Now, let's talk about the new concepts. Probably you know it. Law of one price. Sorry. So what's law of one price? Assume that two countries produce an identical good. No transportation costs, no trade barriers. Everything is identical, right? Right. So the price of the good should be same, no matter which country produce it, right? Like gold. The price of gold is same all around the world. Even it might be produced in Azerbaijan or in Turkey or in US or anywhere else. So because the product is identical, it's gold, same in everywhere, right? Or steel, right? So we have an example of steel here. Assume that, well, oil, not exactly, because the quality of oil is different. I mean, the quality of Azerbaijani oil is different than the quality of Texas oil. If I'm not mistaken, the Azerbaijani oil is better than that one. I don't know. I mean, it's not my area, but oil is different, something different. Right, Nurlan, don't worry. We will come to that point. Right. So assume that the American steel costs $100 per ton, and the Japanese steel costs 10,000 yen per ton. Right. In this case, the exchange rates, as Nurlan said, should be $1. Let me write here. $1 should be equal to 100 yen, isn't it? So assume that we have a different exchange rates. Assume that the exchange rate is $1 is equal to 50 yen, right? So this means that 50 yen divided by US dollar is, let me write here, 50 yen divided by $1. Sorry. This means that 50 yen divided by $1. I mean, $1 is equal to 50 yen. When you see the quotation like this, you should understand that $1 should be equal to 50 yen, right? If it is the exchange rates, then in US, the steel costs $100, right? And in Japan, it costs 10,000 yen, right? But because of the exchange rates, in US, the cost of Japanese steel is equal to $200, isn't it? 10,000 yen with the 50 yen dollar exchange rates is equal to $200. And in Japan, the American steel costs 5,000 yen, isn't it? So if it is the case, because we don't have the transportation cost, we don't have the tariffs, right? No transaction cost. So what happened? Demand for Japanese steel would go to zero, right? So no one wants to buy Japanese steel because it's expensive. I mean, you can buy the American steel in a half price in Japan. and the same price in US. I mean, $100. Clear? Any question? Good. So that's why what happened after demand decreases? So Japanese steel industry could not sell any steel, right? So the unemployment rate start to increase in Japan, and there might be some other economical problems, right? They cannot they cannot sell their steel to the market, basically. So that's why uh, the exchange rates, if the the American steel is equal to $100 and the Japanese steel is equal to 10,000 yen, the exchange rates should be 100. $1 should be equal to 100 yen, right? So any change in uh, steel price will affect the exchange rates. Think about the other way around, right? If something happened and the Japanese steel is increased to, let's say, 20,000 yen, right? If something happened and Japanese steel, because of the inflation in Japan, let's exaggerate it, double it, right? Double to the 20,000 yen, right? So if it is the case, then this law of one price says that the exchange rate should change accordingly. Clear? If the exchange rate fixed with $1 is equal to 100 yen, then they will end up with uh, Japanese. They cannot sell the Japanese steel to the market, so they will end up with collapse the business. Right. So they cannot sell to anywhere else. Exactly. Right. Uh, so this states that the exchange rate between two countries will adjust to reflect the change in the price level of the two countries as well, right? Any change in the price level of the American steel or Japanese steel should be reflected, should be change the exchange rate as well, right? Let's say in this case we increase the price of steel 100%, right? But it might be any different. So if there is an 100% change in the price of Japanese steel, means that the depreciation, the Japanese currency should depreciate, the American currency, US dollar, should appreciate, right? Then this theory suggests that if one country's price level rises relative to the another one, right, then the currency should depreciate. The home currency should depreciate. If Turkey, let's say, have a well, right now the dynamics are different, but as an example, if Turkey has an inflation rate of 20%, right, then the currency should depreciate at least 20%, right? Of course, uh, it works in the long run, not in the short run. Well, I mean, the lira case is different. It's depreciate, but the story is different right now. I mean, take it as an example. Well, because of the inflation differences, Turkey has a 15%, I'm not sure, but something around 15% inflation rate, right? The lira should depreciate at least 15%, right? Otherwise, it will affect the home business, Turkish business, Turkish industries. But this theory cannot fully explain the exchange rates. What are the problems? The problems, all goods are not identical, right, in both countries. Uh, yes, might be very similar, but not identical, right? So the thing about the pen or pencil, uh, any, any pencil produced in Azerbaijan is not exactly identical with the thing about the pencil is the very basic product, but not exactly the identical with the one produced in, let's say, US, right? And also, many goods and services are not traded, like land. You cannot trade the land. I mean, yes, the let's rent in Azerbaijan is cheaper than rent in US, in New York, but you cannot trade this. Or some services, you cannot trade the services, right? Okay, is it clear up to now? Yes, good, great. Thank you very much, guys. Uh, any problem? If you are not sure any part of it, I touch, feel free to ask anytime, please. Okay. In the long run, in the case of labor force services goes to abroad, is the kind of trade-off services. Uh, I don't think so. I mean, think about the haircut, right? The price of haircut right now is, let me explain the Nurlan's, then I'll explain yours as well, Aytaç. Uh, think of the haircut in Azerbaijan is 5 manat, right? Right now, if I'm not mistaken. The haircut, yes, 5 ASEAN, yes. The haircut in UK right now, it's 10 pound, which is 20. I mean, if 1 pound is equal to 2 ASEAN, right? It's 20 manat. So can we trade this services? Is it possible to trade it? No. Well, yes, the barber can start working in here, but the price will be 10 GBP pound, not 5 ASEAN in UK, isn't it, Nurlan? So this service cannot be tradable. Is it clear, or any question? Yeah, of course. I mean, in case the British barber came to Azerbaijan, of course he will charge you 5 ASEAN because the market is 5 ASEAN. Of course, not 10 GBP. Okay, Aytaç, in the previous part, so we have Japanese steel, then American steel. We know the Japanese steel price, then American steel price. The exchange rates should reflect the equilibrium, right? If you know the Japanese steel and the American steel price, let's say in our case, $100 and the 10,000 yen. Let me go back. to that slide, right? In this part, right? In this part. So in this case, the exchange rate should be 100. If you have a different exchange rates other than 100, any exchange rates other than 100, it will affect either Japanese steel industry or American steel industry as a whole, right? So these two products should reflect the the exchange rate should reflect the equilibrium, let's say, right? Law of one price is, yes, it's always applicable, but the problem with law of one price is this: some goods and services are not tradable, right? Okay, good. Let's move on to the this slides. Yes, in the long run, we have four major factors affecting the exchange rates, right? These are relative price levels, right? Like uh, our example, steel and American and Japanese steel, right? Tariffs and quotas, right? This will affect the exchange rates in the long run. Preference for domestic versus foreign goods. This is another issue. If, as an Azerbaijani citizen, if you prefer to buy foreign goods, the American goods, let's say, right, it will affect your exchange rates in the long run. Think about it. Everyone wants to buy American, let's say, pencil. Not only yourself, but everyone. So what happened in this case? You cannot buy American pencil with AZN, right? You need to convert your money to AZN to US dollar. Then demand for US dollar will increase, right? And the demand for AZN will decrease, of course. You are selling your currency against US dollar, right? Then the value of US dollar will increase based on this demand of currency, right? Then your currency will depreciate. Dollar will appreciate, exactly, right? So the preference for domestic versus foreign goods definitely affects your exchange rate in the long run. And lastly, productivity is another issue. Productivity will affects the exchange rates in the long run, right? But what if American goods are sold here within Manat? You mean in Azerbaijan, right? Yes, but in Azerbaijan, uh, but at the end of the day, to buy that good and sell in Azerbaijan, you need US dollar, isn't it? Yes, it's sold in manat in Azerbaijan because US dollar is not an official currency. Yes, uh, I will explain, Ilkin. Let me finish the Nurlan's part. But at the end of the day, to buy that American good, that pencil, you need US dollar, right? Otherwise, no one give you that pen. They're not selling these pens to you, to the Azerbaijan. This US dollar should go to the producer in US. The productivity, how the productivity will affect, I will come I will come to this point, right? Let's explain one by one, right? So in the long run, we have, as I told you, four main factors. Let's start with the relative price level, right? A rise in relative price level cause countries' currency to depreciate. Like our steel example, the Japanese steel. When we double the Japanese steel prices, right, means that the rise in the relative price level means that the increase in the inflation in Japan caused the Japanese currency to depreciate. If you double the price of everything in Japan, of course you need to double the price of dollar as well, right? Which is the exchange rates. So any change in price level should, of course, in the long run, it's not immediately, but in the long run, should depreciate the currency. Is it clear, this one, the first one? Guys, is it clear? Yes, good. Thank you very much. So tariffs and codes, again, increasing the trade barriers cause currencies to appreciate. How? Let's say US Trump put a tariff to, but our example was the Japanese steel, and I know in real life it was the Chinese steel, but let's assume that Japanese steel, right? Let's stick on our example. Mr. Trump put a tariffs on Japanese steel, right? What in this case, what happened? Japanese steel became expensive in US, right? So there will be less demand for Japanese steel in US, means that there will be less demand for the Japanese currency, yen, right? So means that the currency US dollar against Japanese yen should appreciate slightly, right? And the Japanese yen should depreciate slightly because of the less demand to that currency, right? Any questions? Clear? Clear. Good. Then, less demand for yen leads to depreciation, right? Less demand for yen means to more demand for US dollar, and the currency, the US dollar, should appreciate accordingly. Preference for domestic versus foreign goods, like our pen example or pencil example, right? It will affect your currency as well. So increase in demand for countries export, right? Um, uh, right. As I explained in this pencil example, right? Any preferences for domestic versus foreign goods definitely will affect your currency level in the long run. And the productivity, right? If a country is more productive relative to the another, its currency appreciates. Uh, Let me explain. Because the higher productivity is associated with a decline in the price of uh, goods produced, domestic produced goods, right? If you are more productive, means that, let's assume you are producing a pen, right? But somehow you are much more productive than any other countries means that with the same input, you are producing more pen, right? If it is the case, you have a price advantage because of being a productive, right? Then demand for your goods, domestically produced goods, should rise, right? Because I mean, because it's cheaper than the others, right? Then your currency tends to appreciate. Is it clear, Ilkin, how the productivity affects currency? Uh, yes, Nurlan, since you are more productive, means that you are producing more output with the same input, right? So you have an advantage in the markets. So you are selling slightly cheaper than, because of selling cheap, the demand for your goods plus the demand for your currency will increase. Right. As a summary, these are the factors, right, affecting the exchange rates in the long run. This arrow uh, indicates the appreciation, right, and this one, I mean, indicates the depreciation, right? So increasing the price level depreciate your currency, right? Increasing the trade barriers appreciate your currency, right? So the demand for export and imports, increasing the imports depreciate your currency, increase in export appreciate your currency, right? And lastly, productivity. Increase in productivity is appreciate your currency in the long run. Any question, guys, up to now? Good. So we will cover the exchange rates in the short run in the next lecture, right? I mean, next Tuesday, you will have a second midterm assignments, so there will be no classes on Tuesday. But next Thursday, we will cover this exchange rates in the short run part, right? So I do not want to start this part here.